Welcome to the Speak with People podcast, where we believe that healthy communication is the key to unlocking your leadership potential. We are the go-to resource for leaders looking to greatly improve their communication skills, whether it's one-on-one interactions, team settings, public speaking, or digital communication. By improving these skills, leaders can create stronger connections and drive positive change within their organizations. Each and every episode, we sit down with experts from various fields from around the world, just like you're grabbing a coffee with them, to dive into real, practical conversations. Our goal is to help you transform your communication skills so you can lead more effectively, build stronger relationships, and make a lasting impact. So go grab your favorite drink, settle in, and let's learn together. Well, how do you have the conversations you've been avoiding without blowing up or losing trust or losing respect or damaging culture? How do you move through some of those really tough life decisions that you just don't quite know if you're brave enough to be able to do? And you've been putting them off and it's getting louder and louder. Well, I know probably for many of our listeners, you probably already leaned in because I've leaned in on this topic, and I'm so honored to talk with Nicole Bianchi today. She is an executive coach, best-selling author. She's an expert in helping leaders unlock their bravery and transform how they communicate. And those two things are just incredible. So in this episode of the Speak with People podcast, we're going to dive into this idea of the 5 tough talks that every leader must master. And I can't wait to dive in. So if you're a leader who wants more trust, more alignment, more impact, this conversation is you. Nicole, thank you so much for being on the Speak with People podcast.
Thank you for having me, Jason. I'm excited to talk brave conversations with you.
I love it. Well, I can't wait to get to the conversation, but I also want to hear more of your story. I've been following you online, not in a stalker type way, but we connected on LinkedIn. I'm on your email
Yeah.
list, and I just absolutely love what you do. Watch some of your talks, and so just really appreciate it. So how'd you get to this place? Who are you? What you do? How'd you get here?
So I worked in 2 Fortune 300 companies for about 16 years and quickly became the transformational person, the
Mm.
person that this is completely broke. Go in, we're going to send you in for 18, 24, 36 months. And you're going to get in there and really diagnose and fix the leader, teams, and culture because it was directly impacting the business results, right? In a obviously a very negative way. And so I had to get in there and quickly figure out what needed to be done. And I jokingly say it's like a PhD in bravery because I had to learn things so fast, right? And the missteps, and in my Small Brave Moves book, I talk about slips, trips, and falls. There were plenty of them, right? But I've got to practice bravery every single day. And then fast forward, after 16 years of doing that, I decided I want to go out and help leaders more broadly and started my own business 12 years ago. And I found that we're teaching leaders these skills, these frameworks, we're developing them, yet the common missing element is bravery. They're not brave enough to go back and to try these things or brave enough to challenge what's happening in their cultures or their environments. And they just played it safe too much. And so bravery became quickly the content that I felt just deeply connected to and trying to figure out what do we have to do to help leaders be braver with their small brave moves, leading brave conversations, and what does that look like? And so the body of my work is I want to help leaders. I want to make bravery accessible to all and help people think about bravery differently, because when they think about bravery, they think about those big iconic moves, right? Or like the thing that happens once or twice in your lifetime. And it's when they think about bravery as small brave moves and the habits of daily courage, they think about doing things differently. It becomes less, intimidating, and it becomes more just accessible to them. And I want to help elevate how we communicate in this world, because you can lead brave conversations with that are very clear, that are very caring, that help transform situations, right? And drive the change that you're looking for. And getting everybody aligned and staying aligned is the most important piece.
Wow. Wow. Boy, so many things are coming to mind, but the first one is, going way back to the movie Office Space and the Bob sitting behind the table, like what
Yes.
you had to do for years,
Yes.
it's tough. It's really difficult. Because
Yeah.
especially people on the, the they're like, oh, great, someone from corporate, they're going to come fix it all.
Hmm.
That is
Yeah.
such a difficult deal. Ooh,
Well, it is. And I'll tell you, I had to really master how to connect and build the relationships to get the work done. Because I knew if we could have that level of if I understood right where they were coming, why things had been done in the past. So many people come in and they become defensive, or they complain, blame, and defend, or point fingers. It's
yep.
like, no, 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 let's seek to understand. And then once we know that, then I can paint the path forward and bring them along with us, whether it was a union, whether it was the leadership team at a plant. And I traveled all over the business for the first one especially, and had to really reestablish all of that every single time. And so I was always very mindful of the making sure that it wasn't another person from corporate coming in to fix things, but that I was going to be there to see things all the way through and help them grow and stretch. And once they realized my intent, the intentions of what I was doing, it became easier. And I talk about getting things across the finish line. Like, it was easy to do the work with them and roll up our sleeves side by side and make it happen.
Wow. And hopefully corporate gave you money to buy pizza or other food, because that
Yes.
seems to always bridge the gap.
Yes. Yes, there might have been some fun stuff like that too, for sure.
One of my I grew up in the Detroit area, so auto industries everywhere, suppliers, the big three.
Mhm.
And one of my first jobs, I worked for a small supplier, and I worked in the basement printing the 10 to 20-foot long blueprints. So it was an ammonia
Yes.
based machine. I don't remember much of my
Ooh.
time there because all the chemicals, but but I'll never forget, I got QR something, something, something certified, and I had to go into plants. And just here's a young 22-year-old kid coming in, and everyone, you get that person who's like, oh, great, someone from
Yeah.
corporate. And I just tried to come
Oh,
in
yeah.
same way, build the trust, connection, you know, being
Yeah.
able to reach out to each other and all that kind of stuff. And it's amazing. You said something, many things profound, but one of them was just about how communication changes everything. And, maybe for every one person out of 10, I'll get the one person that's like, really? Like, your whole business
Mhm.
is helping people communicate better? Like, what a big deal. And then I'll get the 10 that's like, this is so incredibly important. It's so necessary. And it is like, it affects the bottom line of everything. And so,
Oh, it does.
it's just leaders who don't, I think, little soapbox, don't put much stock in their own communication, and who aren't
Oh.
revisiting, okay, how does it come across as I communicate? Am I present? Am I listening? Am I,
Mhm.
when they're not doing it? Yeah. Ooh, I know that their leadership is at a different level. And maybe their bravery is, dialed down because they're, you know, of where they got to. So, I
I
mean,
do think that I do think, to your comment, there are leaders that lack the self-awareness and some of the emotional intelligence. And so in those moments, it's like, how do you, so I always go in with this positive intent, like, okay, they probably haven't gotten this feedback before, that they're not, the lack of self-awareness or emotional intelligence. Not that I'm going to say it like that. However, my job is, how do I help them see the opportunities for the growth in that specific area? And sometimes when you do that, it's like, oh, you can see the light bulb go on for them, and they just don't realize. And so often, if leaders haven't been truly developed or given the space to stretch and grow and mess up, they just revert back to, a leader that led them right, wrong, or
yep.
indifferent, or maybe even how they've been raised. And you can see elements of that, and it's like, oh, okay, so how do we help them see, so that they, because knowledge is power, right? Then they can show up and do something about it, but not everybody wants to see. That's the
Right.
other thing. Not everybody wants to see.
What's fascinating to me, at least, I spend a lot of my time speaking, training in the financial professional world. So advisors,
Mhm.
wholesalers, licensed bankers, executives, all that kind of stuff. And especially for financial advisors, I don't know this exact stat, 85% males. And
Yeah.
so it's a high percent. And um, we have this giant wealth transfer coming because boomers are getting
Mhm.
older, and boomer men will be dying probably first before their spouses.
Yeah.
And the interesting stat is, when that happens, 80% of the time, the female, the wife, the spouse, the partner fires their financial advisor. Most
Mm.
Mostly because the advisor never really learned how to communicate or just put all the communication towards the male. So I'm in a room in Utah last fall with a group of 15 advisors, 15 males and a woman VP. And I said that and I said, "Okay, males, do you know how to communicate to women?" And they're all like, "Yeah." And the woman VP stands up and says, "Not one of you do. That's why we're doing these
Yeah.
trainings."
Yeah.
And I thought, we
That's
need to be
interesting
in
that they
those
haven't taken the
positions.
time to build the relationship with the wife. That's interesting. And you know what
Right?
I'm thinking about? My husband and I go in and we have quarterly conversations with our advisor to really look at it from a a micro standpoint. And we have three children, what I've been looking at over the last 4 years is this the person that I know will connect with my children and service them and be a true partner when my husband and I, right, God forbid something happens to us sooner rather than later, is this the person that I can trust will take care of
Yep.
the trust dissemination and all of those components and pieces. And so it's interesting that you're seeing it from the spouse. I'm already thinking about it from the children's,
Yep.
and hopefully I'm around another 30 years and it's a little different, but I'm evaluating that relationship to think about it from that perspective already.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, a real interesting pivot. But, you know, so many of us struggle with, the tough talks, the hard
Right.
conversations, sharing. I stuck my neck on the line recently. I think it's safe to say most business leaders admire Donald Miller, the father of, you
Yeah.
know, Story Brand and all that kind of stuff. But he had this video where he's like, more people need to speak their mind. You just got to say what you think. And I thought about it and I was like, "Ooh, I agree." But like to your point earlier, if they're missing some self-awareness or emotional intelligence, I've just seen it so negative, especially in the workplace, because they think, well, it's my
Hmm.
opinion. I get to share it. But maybe they
Right.
don't have that filter, to
Hmm.
know, okay, I shouldn't share this right now. It's not the right time, those kind of things. So regardless of, what it is, what holds us back the most? What especially for leaders, some of us we pride ourselves for being high performers, we're getting stuff done, but then all of a sudden it comes to, oh, I gotta talk to Sheila about that. And
Yeah.
we're just frozen.
Right. So, there's a list of them, but I'll give you kind of the top ones. Number one, we don't know what to say or how to say it.
Mm,
I'm not sure how I should deliver this message, and I'm not sure what to say and how to say it. It tends to be the first one, and that's why Five Tough Talks was born, because I realized all the other books out there are too conceptual. People are like, tell me what to do and how to do it so I can start practicing it. And if you give me something as a guide, then I can edit it and make it my own, right? It becomes that. The other thing is we're constantly always doing that risk reward in our head, right? Like, and sometimes we allow ourselves, the stories we tell ourselves is the risk is too high and the reward's too low, so I'm not going to do it. When really that's not always accurate. The other ones that I hear are, Nicole, I'm not sure. I'm not, what if they get emotional back with me? What about if they respond with silence? What if it's all these what ifs? And it's like, well, what if, and the challenge back to the leader is, what if you approached it very curiously, right? And had a couple of questions you wanted to ask as a follow-up, and it's more of a conversation versus you having to be an expert and have everything right. You're bringing, depending on which conversation you're having, you can be definitely more curious. And um, the other thing I'll just mention is the neuroscience behind bravery, and especially brave conversations, is we are taught that anytime a tough talk, uncertainty, or risk, not taught, sorry, our brain naturally, when tough talks, uncertainty, or risk happen, our brain immediately goes into discomfort or avoidance.
wow.
So if we know that our brain automatically once we know that, that's knowledge is power again, then it's like, oh, everybody naturally responds that way. But so what are you doing to rewire your neural pathways to teach you that brave conversations or small brave moves leads to growth, right? Not discomfort or avoidance. So I wrote a book on Five Tough Talks. I avoid conflict. Like I if you look at my first like tenure, like my natural one is to avoid it. So I wrote Five Tough Talks based on certainly my experience, but other leaders who do it really, really well, and I practice it because I know my natural response is going to be like, oh, I just don't want to do this. I want to avoid it. And I know the consequences of avoiding. Therefore, I know the framework. I've got to lean into the framework, right? And practice it and do it.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, boy. So incredibly powerful. I saw some type of reel recently. I can't remember which leader, but it was like, "Hey, add to your mantra, do it now. Do it now." And it's
Yes,
like,
yes.
okay, yeah, I need to need to have that conversation. One of my very best friends, Colette, shout out Colette if you're listening. Um, uh, I've known her for 15 years. She'll say to me when I've brought up different, like, "Hey, help me through this. How am I going to talk about
Mhm.
this?" And she'll be like, "What are they going to do? Take away your birthday? Like, you're going to be
Right.
okay."
Right, we build it up to be something so much
Yes.
more than it is, and we allow it to sit here and just swirl around. So one of the moves I have in the Five Tough Talks book is it's the pre, like you need to have a brave conversation, but you're not quite sure anything more than all the details of it. And it's a self-coaching thing that just pulls these questions right out of you, like what's the situation? What's the outcome you're looking for? How are you feeling emotionally about it? How might the other, and so it takes you through these guided questions to pull it out. And now you can go, okay, now what do I do with it? And which framework, which conversation do I need to have, which framework? But part of it is just getting out of here. And then you can know what to do with it.
Wow. Wow. Okay, so walk us a little bit more into the small brave
Mhm.
moves. Why is bravery in small moments more powerful than we think? Because we all think of like, you know, um, Mel Gibson and Gladiator, or
Yes.
yeah, the Disney character. I can't remember her name with the long hair. The Disney character with long hair. Wow, I
Okay.
I really crushed that
All of
description.
them.
Yeah.
Wait, what color of hair? No, all of them. That's okay.
Yes. But we think of those, why can't I think of her name? She shot a bow. My daughters
Oh,
loved her. She was amazing.
uh,
Anyways, we think of those big giant moments,
mhm.
but we miss out on some of those small ones.
Yeah. When I think about small brave moves, it's all about the mindsets, behaviors, and habits for us as leaders to be braver in the work we do. And when we think about bravery as those small everyday moments and consistently we're practicing those, that's where we start getting the multiplier effect. And so many times we put bravery kind of off to the side, or the other story we tell ourselves is you're either born with it or not. It's not uncommon for me to, at the end of a keynote, somebody will walk all the line outside of the stage of people that want to talk, either share their story, or a comment that's often said, and I've nipped it in the bud in the keynote now is, well, Nicole, you're born to be brave. So like this stuff all comes naturally for you. And it's like, oh no, 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 no. Like bravery is an acquired behavior and it takes practice, right? And once they hear that, it's like, oh, oh, okay, so I could do that. And so in Small Brave Moves, I talk about the 9 mindsets, behaviors, and habits that we can do for daily habits of courage that we can weave into the work we're doing. And then what happens when you practice it daily, it becomes just so much more accessible to you.
Mhm.
So this is an example of a small brave move and a brave conversation. I was somebody on my team who was really struggling and just struggling in the role and was not showing up. And we were traveling and was just not showing up to some important things. I realized like, okay, something's off here and something's going on. And I could have waited until we both traveled home to have the conversation. And as I'm walking down the hall in the hotel, I'm quickly doing the risk reward in my head, right? And then I'm like, no, no, no. I mean, delaying it, here's what could happen. If I do it now, here's what I can get to the root of. And I remember just taking a deep breath and saying, listen, here's what I'm seeing. Here's here's what I think might be happening. I want to just open up the conversation to see, where your head is at with this role. Because in my mind, I was like, I don't think this is a good fit. And I think he's too afraid to say it's not the right fit. And so it's coming out in all these different ways.
Yep.
And the conversation ended up leading to and I remember in that moment going, well, so many times when people deal with, let's call it a performance issue, it's like, I'm going to tell you the 10 things that you're doing wrong and make you feel really bad about it. I just said, listen, if this is a fit issue, why don't we just acknowledge you're an incredible human, I'm a good human, but the work isn't the right work for you. And
Yeah.
so let's talk about what moving on looks like so that you can find that right role and do work that's going to best serve you. And I remember being so scared, but if I would have waited 3 or 4 days later, it wouldn't have had the same impact as in the moment of what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
And we were able to move quickly and both move on from that in a way where there was just continued trust and respect with each other.
Wow. 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 It's so hard. I remember starting at a new organization, and it was like 3 months in, and I got called into some office, and they're like, "Hey, how come you didn't tell us this?" It was just, a personal thing that it really didn't,
Mhm.
matter in the long run. But I was like, because my last role, anytime you said anything personal or admitted to any type of weakness, I mean, you were immediately cut
Yeah.
off, box on the
Yeah.
desk. And, it's like you have that PTSD. So many of us, I think, also assume the absolute worst with some of these conversations, like,
Yeah.
Nicole's going to turn into this, horrible ogre and no, like, let's just
Right.
have the conversation.
Right. So the first talk, the how we work, is where that's the conversation that's mostly missed. And the reason why it's important to share this now is because it addresses exactly what you're talking about, which we miss this because we're so focused on the strategy, the goals, the objectives, or the tasks, which is the what we're supposed to deliver together in our relationship, Jason. So if we're working together, that's the what, that we forget about the how. And the how is well, how, Jason, what do I expect of you for showing up for me in this work and vice versa, right? What do
Yep.
you need from me? And when we have deep conversations like that early and often throughout our relationship, it helps us get aligned and stay aligned. So, can I just practice one of the questions with you for our
Yeah.
listeners to bring it to life? Because you can see the power of it when I ask it. So, Jason, let's say you're working for me right now. Okay. And so I'm your leader. We're not, or maybe we're peers. It doesn't matter. The question works either way. But Jason, I'm going to have to give you feedback from time to time, and I want you to give me feedback from time to time, so we make sure that we're showing up the way we need to for each other. What's the best way for you to receive feedback? How do you want me to give that to you? What's most important to you?
Uh, if you could first hand me a freshly made chocolate chip cookie and
Done.
then give me the feedback. No,
So,
I love that. For me, it's probably just maybe not right in the moment, but a little bit of time passed to where we're still evaluating stuff, but then to have tell me face to face, not in an email, not in a text, but that
yeah.
that works for me.
Okay, so what I hear you saying is face to face, not in an email or a text, and not in the moment necessarily, maybe, but still not too far afterwards. That's going to be most important to you. And so, what you're giving, and I could ask a couple of follow up questions to get even a little bit deeper, but essentially, what you're doing, Jason, right there is you're giving me the playbook. You're giving me your playbook of what's most important to you. So, if I'm going to pause and give you some feedback, you're going to have the highest likelihood of being able to absorb it, receive it, and
Wow.
do something with it. What happens when we don't ask that question is we give it how we want to receive it.
Hmm.
And we could have 5 people in this room, and each person will tell you something different about
Yeah.
what's most important to them. So, can I ask another question? That's
Yep.
a good one. Okay. So, let's say you're my leader, and you're in the C-suite, and I'm working for you. Jason, it's impossible for you to see everything going on in your executive role. So if I'm seeing something that you're not seeing, what's the best way to share that with you?
Oh wow.
And for the listeners, while Jason's thinking, it's super natural for people to have to pause, think, and process because they don't have this readily accessible because it's a deep question. So you have to give them this space 10, 20 seconds to think about it. Don't fill the silence. I'm talking to you right now, but if I'm really, it's just Jason and I'm going to trust the silence and let him really think
Yeah.
about it so that we can continue the conversation. So how you're responding, like, oof, right? That's very natural
Yeah.
and to be expected.
Wow. Yeah, I love that. And my answer probably in the moment would be, during our regular one-on-ones, those type of things are, great to bring up.
Okay.
And then my initial thought from there was, to make sure I add that maybe to a one-on-one once a quarter, so they know that
Yeah.
they can, have that kind of that freedom, back and forth. But, that's great. I love that.
So what you do by us engaging in that conversation, you're giving me permission to share something like that with you, right? So now I have your permission. It's going to be easier for, even though it might be tough to share something, um, I, I have your permission to do it. So now I have to make that brave move. Also, I'm assuming positive intent because you can't see everything, right? It's impossible, Jason, as a leader. And
Yep.
so many times we have people sitting in our organization that are saying, well, so, Jason sees that, but he's just not doing anything about it. Well, 9 times out of 10, Jason isn't seeing that.
Yep.
And we're just making big assumptions. So that allows for other conversations. So I'll tell you, when you said putting it on quarterly, my team, we have it once a week on our Friday huddles when we get together to kind of huddle and debrief the week and get our heads ready for the next week. We have that as the top question that we ask. Is there
Mm,
anything that you're seeing that I'm not? And we add that in before we even get into the huddle. And it can be something positive. It could be something challenging each other and how we're thinking about something, which is super helpful because we're running so fast.
yep. Wow. Oh, that's powerful. I was thinking about, well, phew, many things as you're asking these questions that explore uncharted territories of my brain, which is that's how great questions are. Uh,
Yeah.
One I was thinking about, and I hope I did a webinar right before this. So if I've already said the story, you'll have to tell me. I apologize. But a couple months ago, I was doing an in-person training, bank tellers, and I referred to them as leaders. And a 60-year-old
Mhm.
woman in the front row raised her hand and she said, "You keep calling us leaders." And I was like, "Yeah." She goes, "I'm not a leader. I'm just a teller." And she'd been with the bank for like 20 years,
Mhm.
sweetest, most reliable, but she's just, and I said, "Oh," I said, "Do you have any influence in your home?" "Well, yeah." "Your neighborhood?" "Yeah." "With your customers?" "Yeah." "You're a leader." I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
I think sometimes we maybe not have the tough talk or we take the brave steps because we've convinced ourselves, I'm just a teller. I'm just
Right.
a,
Right.
what, there's no place for me in that. So I was like, I went right back to that moment with her as you were,
Yeah.
unpacking that. Cause I think maybe sometimes people think, well, I'm just a whatever.
I completely agree. And when I talk about bravership, which is bravery plus leadership,
Mm,
I use that same language as well because, and again, it's if bravery is the missing element is in us as leaders, then what would bravership look like? And when we live a life of bravership, it actually creates a competitive advantage for us as leaders, as individuals, leaders in leadership and life, right? And we can grow influence and we can accomplish more when we think about it that way. And every time I say that phrase, I have to immediately follow it up with helping people understand leadership isn't about having direct reports,
mm,
right? You don't have to have direct reports to be a powerful leader in the work that you do.
yep.
That's it.
Wow. Wow. There's a leader who said, what's celebrated is repeated. I think I heard it from Andy
Mhm.
Stanley. What's celebrated is repeated. And I was thinking about that,
Mhm.
especially for the listeners who lead people. I mean, if you, again, I'm in my world a lot, banks. And so as they're standing around in a huddle and, a leader was to say, "Man, Billy this week, he learned customer's name," just to be able to celebrate that and call it out, I think
Yeah.
would even give bravery to some of the people going, "Oh, wait a minute, I could do that." Like,
Yes, it makes it more accessible because people are like, "Oh, that's what great looks like."
yeah,
Sometimes they don't understand, and I completely agree. Those little small wins, those small moments will end up multiplying, right? In the same way that a small brave move does. And
I love that.
sometimes a small brave move is getting to know the customer and asking a couple of questions and building that relationship and connection. And back to the tellers, I was a teller in college and I Loved. I worked the drive-through because it had the longer hours in the evenings outside of college, and I got to know each one of my customers, and I would look forward to, like,
Mm,
because a lot of times there were business transactions, they were putting through the thing, and so it would take me a few moments, but I could have a conversation with them to better understand it, and that is leadership, right?
mm.
That is leadership. It's not transactional, like, you're taking the money in and you're kicking back a receipt. It's taking time to connect, right, in a
Yep.
real way with the people that we serve.
I love it. I was in a room with branch managers. They're probably Gen X, couple boomers,
Mhm.
and the door opened to just some struggles they're having with their Gen Z
Yeah.
or younger millennials, looking at people, showing up on time, not looking at their device the entire time. I'm wondering what you're seeing, especially as you're with different companies, training, consulting, all that kind of stuff. How, uh, you know, maybe those of us who have been around for a while are helping our younger team members,
Mhm.
take some of those brave steps. Because I think sometimes we think, well, everybody knows that you're supposed to look somebody in the eye
Yes,
when,
yes.
and most of Gen Z's childhood has been spent staring at their phone. So they talk
Right.
to each other while they're staring at their phone. I don't know if
Yeah.
they know you're supposed to look. So, I'd love your thoughts on that.
Oh boy, you're pulling up a lot of stories in my head. Real quick, I have a Gen Zer child. I'm gonna share one fast story, and I'm gonna tell you how she's grown. And if she hears this, she's gonna listen to this podcast and laugh along with us and appreciate the growth. I promise. But she wanted to compete in track in college, so we go to her first college visit, and she calls the coach says, "Call me when you arrive, and I'll come out and show you where to go, you and your parents." So she calls and she doesn't anticipate it going to voicemail. And she goes, "What do I do? It went to voicemail." And I immediately went into, "What do you mean you don't know what to do?" And this banter, my husband and I start bantering and making fun of her, not even thinking that the voicemail had picked up. And so here the three of us are like, and I was like, "I have failed as a parent. The fact that you don't," and like, and she's like, you can, I assume she hung up. She did not hang up, and it was all on that voicemail. And when we met that coach, I was like, "Please delete the voice." So he ends up calling. He sees the missed call, calls right back, doesn't listen to the voicemail, and you can tell he's acting completely normal. And I was like, "Listen, you're going to hear a long-winded voicemail. Go ahead and delete that." It was actually going on. However, I realized in that moment that the fact that my 18-year-old doesn't know how to respond in a voicemail is tragic. And I started being really intentional about crafting, right, what it needs to look like to do some of these things that I do think the Gen Zers have missed out on. And I think us as leaders have to model it, but also craft it into our values and agreements that we shape as a team. So once people have norms and rules and kind of agreements on how to operate, they know how to show up in a powerful way. And without them, you get this dysfunctional behavior because everybody's bringing in their own stuff, right?
Wow. Wow. So good. Yeah. A 25-year-old daughter, brilliant. I mean, just brilliant. Straight A's, always brilliant.
Yes.
Will not pick up the phone. Like she waited
Yeah.
4 weeks to call her doctor. I'm like, I can't call. Like, you got to call the doctor.
Yes. Yes, and helping them through that,
Yep.
right? Helping them through that issue. And I have a similar 23-year-old son who was doing the same thing and putting it off. And I was like, "You have no choice at this point. You have to do it. Let's talk about and just getting them comfortable doing some of these things and practicing it, just like we're saying with bravery. It's the same thing. It's giving them the space to practice with it, but also setting clear just clear agreements around how we're going to operate
Yep.
together as a team, so people, and oh, hey, we'll help grow you there. But that's where I think leaders miss out, and then they get frustrated because they don't have that common sets of agreements or values of how we want to live and be together when we're doing our most important work together. And
Wow.
then you're having to have even tougher of the tough talks, right?
Yep. Yep. Whew. Uh, I thought I came up with this phrase, speak with people, not at them. I was very proud of
Mm,
myself about 15 years
I
ago. It
love it.
turns out there is really nothing new under the sun. The great Vin Scully, Dodgers broadcaster, said it first. But, I've been a public speaker for a long, long time. worked for places, have always loved interpersonal communication, how we communicate as teams. But I got to this place when I started an MBA where they handed us Primal Leadership by Daniel Goleman. And
Yes.
my mind was just like, wait a minute, I'd only ever experienced bosses who spoke out of fear, control, manipulation,
Hmm.
talked down at you, rode you so hard to get more production. And then Primal Leadership's like, wait a minute, you're actually, that's really not working.
Right.
Where do you see as you're training people, as you're working with people? Do you think the landscape has changed to a healthier version of that leadership? Because fear, right? Like we get this crazy fear of our boss
Yeah.
sometimes, and I'm going to be chewed out again, and I'm going to nasty email, and you could see why the fear just like engulfs the bravery. Be able
Right.
to respond to that. I've had seasons in my life where just shamefully so, maybe not shamefully, but even just opening up my laptop, it was a brave thing because
Mm.
I'm like, "Ah, I'm gonna have an email from them, and that's
Right.
where some of our folks are. So I would love your thoughts on that.
So there's two things I want to address here in this, because this is deep and trouble and a challenge that people face. So first, if you're working for a leader like that still today, just know we learn just as much from the not so great leaders as we do the amazing leaders. So it's a
Mm,
pivotal learning moment. And what I will tell people in that moment is you having the brave conversation up and helping that leader see something that they may not be seeing is your presence is the intervention. And so you finding the courage and the words to pull the mirror up and help them see the ripple effect of what they're doing is really essential. So that's number one. You don't have to, and some people choose just to quit and move on. I would challenge you to take a run at sharing something that likely nobody else has before with this leader, and so that they can hear it and do something about it. Again, because knowledge is power. Number two, I do see, because I worked at my first Fortune 300 company was an old school manufacturing company, consumer
mm,
packaged goods. And so in the plants, it was very directive and command and control. And we were moving it to a more coaching environment. And one of my first consulting engagements when I went out on my own was helping GE Aviation build their teaming models. So they had the technical side, but they didn't have the behavioral side. So that meant I went in, designed a program to go in and work with the frontline supervisors at their plants to help them swing from directing to coaching, right?
wow.
And driving that ownership and empowerment deeper. And at the end of the day, right, to shift that and really build out that coaching muscle. Yet at the end of the day, there's a time where you have to direct, there's a time you have to coach, there's a time you might just need to advise or consult, or there's a time you need to move into teacher mode. And so your biggest leadership strength is being able to run along that continuum and know what's needed at each moment and pull
Wow.
that out and not just default to one, which is directing. Or some people think the answer is well, I coach 100% of the time. Well, that's impossible. You can't just coach 100% of the time unless you maybe have a super mature team and you're clear on your goals and there's no change happening in your business. Maybe then, but you have to be able to run along that continuum and choose what's right for the moment in those conversations. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Wow. Wow. You've kind of given us a masterclass here today in this podcast episode. Wow. As we kind of begin to close the conversation,
Yeah.
what would you say to the listener, the leader listening today, who's just like, okay, I've been avoiding the hard conversation. I just need that last, what's my first brave move, or give me that last, push over the edge. What would you say to them?
Uh, so first, let's talk about the brave move. It is this. I'm close on the statistics. It's like if you write down the brave move, it's 46% likelihood of achieving it. Okay.
Hmm,
If you put voice to it and actually share it with somebody else that's willing to help you be accountable for it, it goes north of 76%.
phew,
And I want you to think about it, like we so often go at this alone, like uh, why, right? And so in Small Brave Moves, I talk about having a swim buddy, somebody who's just unselfishly fired up for you during the good times, right? That will help you celebrate those little moments. And also during the, hey, I just need to process this or think about it. So that's one thing to think about is who do you have that's a swim buddy that you can process and have these confidential conversations and that can help you kind of unleash and move forward. You don't have to do it alone. And then for brave conversations, pull it out of your head and use the framework, because once you see it and it's written down and you kind of flow through that and you have a good conversation starter, which is in Five Tough Talks. I have them for each of the Five Tough Talks. I give you 15 ways to kind of open the conversation. So
Wow.
take one, edit it, make it your own. And then at the end, each one of those you'll see they end with accountability and action. So we're not just going to have a good conversation. We're going to end with movement forward. And here's some moves that you can make. And once you see that, you're like, okay, you draft it, you script out your moves. You're in such a place of strong confidence. So when we speak off the cuff, which we leave a lot of times the brave conversations to, we're 38% less confident when we just speak off the cuff. You know, like, oh, I'm good at talking, I'm good at sharing conversations, but there's not intentionality around it. And the more
Wow.
intentional and clear you are by rolling through that and just get your mind ready for it, then you can handle the things that come up in the middle of it with so much more flow and ease. And so do the work. That's what I would
Wow.
tell you on the break. Do the work, pull it out, practice it, and then go have it. And you'll see the difference in how you show up in leading those brave conversations.
Wow. Wow. I used to my employees who would do performance evaluations. Uh,
Hmm.
I would have them actually write it out word for word, because I
Hmm.
found sometimes we just won't share maybe that final 10% or that final, because we're like,
Hmm.
oh. But if we wrote it out and we read it to them and
Yes.
we gave them the sheet of paper with it, because if you give them the sheet of paper, they're going to
Yeah.
read through it first. But
Right.
yeah, just being out that plan is like, okay, no, I'm
Yeah.
not going to go off the cuff, but I'm going to think this thing through. Powerful.
Well, and I even challenge it, like script out everything, and then you'll see in the I actually have in the workbook a bulleted version of it that you can move it into more, so you're not relying on every word, but the key points that you want to make and how you want to land the conversation, and the moments even between where it's like, okay, there's a spot in there where it's like, okay, stop, trust silence, listen to what they have to say, right? Which sometimes it's about controlling ourselves in the midst of those as well. And so even whether you want to take the full script or a modified version in, that's something that just helps, again, gives you so much more, just helps you be brave in leading that conversation. And for the person receiving it, the more clear and concise and caring that you are about it, the fact that you've put time into prepare, it will show, and they will realize, they will appreciate it, so deeply appreciate the work that you did. When I've had conversations with leaders who have done no prep, it's so obvious, and it's insulting almost now, because I'm like, you even do the work to like deliver this in a good way. Like, come on.
Yep. Yep.
So do the work.
Wow. Wow. Nicole, you are absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for walking us through this. I know it's going to help so many. Before we let you go, we're building this online library where people can kind of get new resources.
Yeah.
As a speaker, is there someone that you look to every time you hear them speak? They just check every box. You're like, at some point, you've got to listen to one of their talks.
Oh, Mel Robbins would be it for me. And I'm sure you know who Mel Robbins is, but she shows up so authentically, so real, whether she's on a stage, on a podcast, and it's just, she shows us all aspects of what being a leader looks like, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the messy parts.
Yep.
I appreciate and aspire to be even more authentic and real like her. So
Yeah.
she's amazing.
You have a great podcast. We'll talk about that in a minute. If you're not all of us are podcast listeners, avid podcast
Yeah.
listeners. If you are, is there a guilty pleasure, gardening, true crime, whatever, or a development one that you just,
Oh.
everybody, you got to know about this podcast?
My favorite one is How I Built This by Guy Raz.
Mm,
And it's because he takes these brands and shares the messy journey that they've been on. And what it reminds me of is we think that our journeys are like from point A to point B and it's perfect. And there's some companies that it took till year 15 for them to really hit their stride. But I learn something about how they solved a problem or the struggle that they went through. It helped reminds me that I'm not alone
mm,
in growing business. And it's just fascinating, because all you usually hear about in these business stories is the press releases, the good, the success. You don't hear about the struggles, and the struggles are real, and we can learn so much from them. So that's mine where I'm like, wow, I had no
Yeah.
idea,
Oh,
and
I
I
love
just,
that.
yeah,
And then
that's my
lastly, is
favorite
there a
one.
book that, every listener, you got to make sure you read this book that just to be powerful for your leadership?
The one that's coming up for me right now would be, I'm going to say, The Coaching Habit
Mm.
by Michael Bungay Stainer, because he takes the concept of coaching and distills it into 7 questions that you can practice immediately to help you, instead of trying to solve problems, ask powerful questions that help them lead to the answer. It's one that I use anytime that somebody's looking to strengthen their coaching skills. It's a powerful one.
Wow, amazing. Okay, so tell us about your podcast. Tell us about where we can find you online. We'll make sure we
Yes,
post in our Facebook group, in our email, your
thank you.
books, your podcast, everything. But where's the best place to find you?
Yeah, www.nicolemmbianchi.com, and you'll see, the podcast is Small Brave Moves. So if you're looking for a short dose of bravery, 10 to 15 minutes, we talk through, the different mindsets, behaviors, and habits of being braver in the work that we do. We break down the 5 death talks and, go into just challenges that are real, that people are facing, leaders are facing right now, with real, practical, actionable next steps. Just 1 or 2 things that you can start doing to shift that for you.
Wow, I love it. Thank you again.
Thank
This has
you.
been absolutely amazing, and appreciate your time to be on the Speak to People podcast.
Thank you for having me, Jason. It was fun to have this conversation with you.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Speak with People podcast. It means the world to us when you share this episode. Thanks for liking, subscribing, or following the podcast. That really does help the podcast get into more ears and into more leaders listening. Also, don't forget, we have 2 exciting resources for you. The first is go to Facebook and join the speakers group. This is a community designed for leaders who want to grow their communication skills. Also, go to speakwithpeople.com/skills library to access the Communication Skills Library. It is an online resource chock filled with resources that will inspire you and transform you and grow your communication skills. Thanks again for being a part of the listening community. We cannot wait for the next episode.